This is Storm at Sea by Jack Lindsay, published in a limitation of 250 copies by the Golden Cockerel Press in 1935. This was the last of Golden Cockerel's series of so-called guinea classics, which were books containing short works of fiction by contemporary authors that were published at a price of 1 guinea, which is about £60 in modern money. And I reviewed several other books from that series in the past on this channel, and I'll link those videos down in the description below. Sticking with this copy of Storm at Sea though, we have a book which is bound in series with the rest of the Guinea classics, which means we have sides which are printed in this design by Terza Garwood, and it has this geometric pattern, and we see that the author's initials and the initials of the Golden Cockerel Press are incorporated into that pattern there. The binding material is a little bit of a mystery to me. The first book in the series, which was the 100th story of A.E. Coppard, is quite clearly bound in paper and it feels not especially luxurious. If we go to a later book in the series, so this is A German Idyll by H.E. Bates, this has what could potentially be paper, but it feels much more like cloth to me. And A Storm at Sea sits somewhere in between, so I'm not quite sure whether this is paper or cloth. I rather suspect that it's a paper covering. And then the book is also quarter bound in this Morocco leather. It's blue on this occasion, and we see that it is blocked here on the spine with the title Storm at Sea by Jack Lindsay. I quite like this delicate blocking that is set horizontally rather than vertically along the length of the spine. The top edge is gilded and the bottom and fore edges have been left untrimmed. If we open the book, we reach the end papers. We see here stamped bound by S&S London. That's Sangorski and Sutcliffe, quite a famous bookbinder, and they bound, I believe, all of the books in this series. The book is printed on bachelor's paper, which was one of the favoured papers of the private press movement in the early 20th century in England. It's one of my favourite papers. It has a nice tactile quality. This particular example of the paper is not up to the standard of some of the finest examples, but a very nice tactile paper all the same. And then here we see the title page. It's a fairly simple affair. A couple of things to note. So we have this engraving of a cockerel, and we also see here 10 Staple in London. So this was after the Golden Cockerel Press had moved from its original premises in Waltham St Lawrence to London. We see this copy was actually an ex-library book that wasn't part of the advertisement, so that's a little bit frustrating. And then here we have the first page, so we get our look at the wood engravings, first of all, which are by John Farley. He was one of the great wood engravers of the first half of the 20th century, and this book contains 4 examples of his work, so not especially generous, but we do have 4 roughly half-page illustrations. And then one of the most interesting things I think about this Guinea series of books is that they're set in a face called Golden Cockerel type, which was a typeface designed by Eric Gill specifically for use at the Golden Cockerel Press. And in fact, the first example of that type in use was in the 100th story of A.E. Coppard, which was the first book in this Guinea series. I think this is quite a nice face. It was designed specifically to sit well alongside wood engravings. One thing that I don't very much like about the typographic design of all of these Guinea books is that the paragraphs are indicated neither with an indentation nor with extra line spacing. So we just have the start of each new paragraph printed flush there, and I think it makes the pages look a little bit more scruffy. It also makes it harder to spot the beginning of new paragraphs on the page. So there's not much more to this book. What I will do is I will show you those 4 engravings by John Farley, and while I do that, let me also comment on the story. This is a short work. It is set during the period of Roman antiquity, and the whole story takes place aboard a merchant ship. It's a story of forbidden love. The first half of the story I found a little bit difficult to engage with because it very much takes place inside the minds of the protagonists. So it's more a story told through thoughts rather than through actions. But the second half of the book picks up, and I found that rather more interesting. The book in total has 76 pages. And then we see here at the end, the colophon page, it is hand numbered and it has been signed by the author Jack Lindsay. So that is Storm at Sea by Jack Lindsay from the Golden Cockerel Press, 1935. If you're interested in a cheap entry point to the Golden Cockerel Press, this would not be my recommendation. I think that you would get a much better book if you were to buy, for example, The 100th Story of A.E. Coppard, which sells for a broadly similar price, perhaps even less because it had a higher limitation. It has all of the same design features as did Storm at Sea. It has the additional appeal of being the first example of that golden cockerel type in use, and I found the story in this book also more interesting than that in Storm at Sea. But if you're collecting the series, of course, you'll need to get Storm at Sea, and there's nothing terribly wrong with it.